I'm so happy to be joined here today with you, Duygu. Thank you so much for coming on. We're going to cover some really great things, but before I get into the questions and all of the above, I'd love to give you a chance to just share with my audience who you are and a little bit about your background.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I'm Duygu Balan. I'm a psychotherapist and author. I specialize in intergenerational trauma, attachment wounding, and I have a lot of very long experience, many years of experience in working with trauma and also with a lot of younger people. So that's why my second workbook actually targets a younger audience. And I also write fiction, which is one of my biggest passion. I like writing about mental health struggles and therapy and all of that from a fictional storytelling perspective too. And I work with individuals and couples, and it's just, the biggest privilege for me is to be able to meet people in their darkest, deepest secrets and help them understand their narratives and rewrite their narratives and live their life according to their dreams.
What a gift that is. And for so many people, I know many of the people in my audience, they may be unfamiliar with some of the terms that you just mentioned. So we'll get into that in a minute. But I heard you mention that you are specifically drawn to recently helping younger people and young adults, which is one of the reasons why I brought you on this podcast. Obviously, it's a podcast for parents of teenagers, and many of those parents have young adults as well. I'm just curious to know what draws you to that specific demographic.
I think one of the reasons is my practice is based in New York City and San Francisco, so I get to work with a lot of new adults in different fields. And I worked for many years. I worked with youth offenders. I worked with in school systems. So I really find it very fulfilling to work with young minds and minds kind of struggling with um, the older systems that don't work necessarily and how things don't really evolve in the pace of their psyche, perhaps. And that is a very important struggle. And I think, you know, being able to be an adult in their lives who gives them space and hears them is it's just a big honor for me. And I really appreciate the generation right now because they are so different than the generation that I'm from. They are so much more in tune with what's going on in the world. They're so much more sensitive. They're so much more open and aware, which leads them to struggle in a very different way, which leads them to internalize and absorb a lot of the pain in the world and a lot of the pain of communities that actually are so far from them. And that kind of sensitivity and that kind of responsiveness to the suffering that's going on right now in the world is just very inspiring to me.
Yeah.
So that's why I really enjoy working with them. I really enjoy they're enlightened in such a different way, and I learn from them. And I really it's just very fulfilling and inspiring to me.
I love how you frame it as it being enlightening. It could be so easy to look at it as like this is a negative thing. This is something that they need to overcome, or it's a hardship that they need to harden up on and, create their boundaries and, get tougher. But I love that you're reframing it as this is really a gift that can be nurtured and utilized in a really positive way. And I know I did look through and go through your book, Confidently Chill, the workbook for young adults. And I was really fascinated and interested in sharing with my audience the strategies that you have in there. I love how you're combining traditional therapeutic approaches with some somatic practices and meditation mindfulness practices and combining the two. And I wonder if you could give a kind of a quick overview, and not quick, but an overview of the strategies that you feel could be most helpful when a young adult or teen is struggling with anxiety or burnout? What strategies would you say are the go-to and that would be probably the most helpful in implementing?
Most helpful a recommendation that I have that I offer to individuals that I work with is to really find what works for you. To really, I think we sometimes miss the uniqueness that we have, that everyone is different, that we all have different needs. And there's that desire for to have like this prescription, this top-down prescription of, see, this is going to work for you, do this 5 times a day, or whatever it may be. But actually, that we're all so nuanced and so complex, and we all bring everything that has happened. We're a summation of all of our experiences, of everything that has happened to us. We're here today, sitting right here, as even in this conversation. So I always tell people to really just allow yourself to experiment, not to be bound by this notion of, I know this doesn't work for me, or this will never work for me, or so and so said this worked for them, so it must also work for me. None of that is actually true. We don't know what works because we always change. So what didn't work last year may work this year. So experimenting and being curious and trying to find your own method, whatever that might be. And in the workbook, actually, this is instructed. So there's all these different exercises, but those exercises can transform into something very unique and very different. And I encourage people to allow for that. Don't try to stay with the writing prompt that I offer. That's just the beginning. It's just a nudge. So, um, whatever, just trying and seeing what works best, and what works today might not work tomorrow, and then tomorrow something else might work. So I think the flexibility and curiosity about it would be one of my biggest recommendations, to stay with that.
That is a really good reminder because for so many people, they internalize that there is one right way of managing stress and handling anxiety and burnout because it worked for their parent or it worked for their therapist recommended it. And then they realize, that actually, I don't like that. And it can be triggering to do some breathing techniques. It can be really difficult to sit in quiet meditation for some people. And I love that there are so many options and that you really reinforce the importance of finding what works for you and really following your own intuition. The other part I
Mhm.
heard you say is to know that it changes over time because there can be a
Yes.
lot of self-judgment and, well, this worked for me before. Why isn't it working now? But you're constantly evolving as a human. So it makes sense that sometimes things would work and sometimes they wouldn't.
Yeah. Personally, for me, for instance, I always was resistant to meditation because I never thought that sitting still would work for me. I'm not a very still person. I always have to be moving, and that was something that felt very I have felt very disconnected, and I felt very disencouraged, as my belief was I can never meditate because meditation means to sit still for an hour, and I can never do that. And then I discovered dance meditation. Actually, 5 rhythms is a practice. There's many different ones, and dance meditation really allows you to move as you are focusing, or as you're allowing for thoughts to move through you. And that type of a meditation really worked for me. And through that, through training my brain to be able to meditate, I am also able to do, I still like moving meditation much more than I like still meditation. So, but still meditation actually really works for some people. So I think it's really just really important to know yourself, and also constantly try to challenge yourself, try to see if that works today. Maybe it does work today. Maybe it didn't work yesterday, but it will work today. So I think it's just, yeah, that's definitely very important to know what kind of movement, or like in terms of like mind exercises, really resonate with you, because it doesn't have to be the same as your parents or your friends.
Exactly. And the parents who are listening, it's important for them to hear too, because what works for them may not work for their child or their teen and young adult. It's offering, here's a plethora of strategies, and this worked for me. Maybe try it. If it doesn't, great. If it does, great. but there doesn't have to be one way to do it. And that's a really important reminder for parents to hear for sure. So thanks
Yes.
for reinforcing that. Yeah.
When we become parents, I'm a parent too. And when you're a parent, in some ways you meet this creature, right? Like you meet this, like, who are you? Tell
Yeah.
me who you are. And then when they're a baby, and then when, like right now, my son is almost 13, so we're kind of heading into the teen zone. And I'm really interested in what kind of a teenager he's
Mhm.
going to be and what kind of things is going to connect him to himself and to others and
Yeah.
to let him explore that. And while he explores that, I'm very curious too. So I think curiosity as a parent, as you're kind of like setting the boundaries and setting the area of protection for your child, but letting them um, become independent and grow into who they are meant to be. That
Yeah.
is, I think, very important.
Yes, absolutely. And curiosity is the key word there. And I hear you say it as it applies to so many of these things. And I know that it can be difficult to be curious because that judgmental mind will take over. But if it's what I'm hearing from you, if you can continue to go back to curiosity, whether it's around managing your stress or raising your child, that can really help you keep your thoughts and your experience in check. Yeah. So I really wanted to get into, you mentioned that you specialize in intergenerational trauma and family systems. I also saw attachment wounding. For my listeners who are new to that, would you mind just giving an overview of what that means?
Uh, yes, so intergenerational trauma basically means a trauma that's passed on from one generation to another generation. And this doesn't really have to be something major. It can even be something about the notion of what it means to be a woman, for instance, right? Or what it means to be a mother. So much of that is actually passed from generation to generation, where for instance, the understanding that a mother is always sacrifices herself, always puts everyone else in front of them, that they have to be, cook everything from scratch and um, maybe not prioritize their career or their needs, but always prioritize other people and their needs, and always have a smile and really enjoy being a mother. Like all of these notions that we have of what it means to be a mother, actually, a lot of them are really impossible to meet all these criteria, right? That is actually passed on from generation to generation. So we pass it to our daughters, for instance, the idea of what kind of a woman you should grow up to. So that's and of course there's the other end of the spectrum where certain so for instance abuse or ineffective communication styles or that kind of stuff can also get passed on from generations. Ineffective conflict resolution skills and that kind of stuff can also get passed because children ultimately learn through modeling, right? We teach our children to understand their emotions, we teach our children to express their emotions, we teach our children how to be in a relationship. So that is what intergenerational trauma means.
Okay.
And then the attachment wounding is a good enough parent, if you will. With the most important piece is the security piece. So with secure attachment, the child, no matter what, knows that the parent loves them unconditionally. That even, of course, there's less than ideal moments, and parents will take the responsibility, take accountability, try to repair. This is secure attachment. And when there's not secure attachment, when the child feels very for instance, they don't know what kind of parent they're going to meet tonight. They have to adjust their moods according to their parents' moods, or the parent is just not emotionally available for different reasons. These kind of things can lead to an attachment wounding where the belief is, for instance, love equals pain. This could be a belief, or
Mhm.
anyone who loves me will leave me. This could be a belief. So these are the narratives that we internalize. And actually, the good news is that none of this is permanent. So it's not genetic; it's learned. So we can actually undo these through
Yeah.
secure relationships, through therapy, but not just therapy, with other family members or friends or communities, support groups, we can actually rewire our selves and have secure attachments and secure and better ways of relating to others. So that is kind of the work that I specialize in, is to help couples and individuals understand the attachment wounding or understand the familial trauma that has been passed down to them, and then rewire and find new ways of relating.
Yeah. So if I have somebody listening who is like recognizing, oh, I have these familiar patterns that I've been following and I didn't even realize they were running the show, but I'm now seeing this negative impact that it's having on my relationship with my child. You mentioned awareness and that it can be turned around. So when they hear this and they're like, gosh, I am aware of this now. Can you tell me a little bit more about what would be the next steps? You mentioned therapy. Of course, there's your book. If they either aren't ready for therapy or they have a therapist, what can they do on their own to start to turn things around?
Well, first of all, if there's that awareness, that understanding of, oh, these are the patterns and this is what's repeating on my in my life, I want to say congratulations.
Yeah.
And I really, really encourage people to celebrate that, because that is huge. And that is, I feel like, the most important part of the healing, and also the healing. It is what begins the healing, and it's I would say half of it actually. So
Okay.
um, what I would say is to, once you recognize these patterns, to constantly be in touch with yourself. And this could be, for me, it's writing. But it can, for many people, I work with a lot of artists, a lot of musicians, a lot of actors. So for them, it's their art, right? A lot of actors actually will get in front of a mirror and they would act out scenes and they would act out their emotions. And that's how they get in touch with and understand their patterns and understand what keeps happening. And for musicians or painters, it's that art form. So whatever creative expression they have, and I feel it's important to say that you don't have to create masterpieces. That's not the point. The point is to connect to yourself. So whatever draws you, whatever leads you to yourself, that's the art form that you should pick. And just to kind of reinforce that understanding. And the goal is not to never get triggered. The goal is not to never fall into these patterns, because that is a goal that's impossible. We will always have moments of vulnerability, moments when we're tired, moments when our plate is way too full, that we might fall into these old patterns. But the important part is, rather than falling into the patterns unknowingly and repeating the dysfunctional um, connections, what is important is to be able to say, oh, I'm being triggered right now.
Yeah.
I'm acting in my with my old patterns right now. My old patterns are getting activated right now. That awareness will really help you catch yourself, basically.
Yeah.
And then whatever helps, like whatever helps to ground, whatever, how you could call a good friend, you could put on a good song that you like, or take a walk, or whatever is going to just allow yourself to release these negative feelings, or check yourself. That, I would say, is the most important. That is what healing is, to be able
Yeah.
to catch yourself on time and give yourself what you need.
Yes, absolutely. And what's interesting when it comes to the expression of the awareness, and when you mentioned painting and you mentioned movement, and what's interesting is sometimes that generational trauma will impact a person's ability to do that. So, for example, somebody who has been conditioned to be somewhat of a perfectionist, like it needs to be just so, may have difficulty just having some free creative expression because it's not good enough, or I'm not an artist, or, I'm uncoordinated, and all those narratives. So that's where I can see for sure having the awareness. Oh, that's that old narrative running through my mind, and also being able to release that and challenge it and kind of stand against it a little bit. Yeah, so good. So if a parent is listening and they are recognizing this in themselves, and influence it's having over their relationship with their kids. I'm hearing the first step is awareness. And most of the parents who listen to this have some awareness because they're actually spending time in their day listening to how to be a better parent, and expression, getting it out there and finding ways. If they're noticing an impact on their child, whether it's something to do with intergenerational trauma or something like that, but they're noticing that their teenager or young adult struggles with anxiety or struggles with burnout, what would you recommend that they would do to help support them through that?
I mean, as the cliche goes, and cliches are there for a reason,
Mhm.
uh, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. You have to, and I think this is really hard for many mothers. I know I struggle with this, and have struggled with this when my child was very young as well. It's so easy to postpone your needs. It's so easy to, cancel that one yoga class a week that you're gonna take because, there's like there's so much demand, and um, or not get in touch with yourself, or not allow yourself to connect with the mom friend, right, that really hears you. These are things that we as mothers definitely need to prioritize, as difficult as it is. We have to take care of ourselves first so that we can take care of our children. That is, I think, number one. So being able to allow ourselves, and that goes into self-compassion, right? We mothers are can be so harsh on ourselves because the society that we live in has such big demands on us that, as I mentioned just before, the demands are almost impossible to meet, right? Like the amount, the ask is so big. So we can really internalize these demands and really get harsh on ourselves. And also with social media, everyone looks like they're having such amazing mothering experiences, and everything is so shiny, and glows, that you might feel insufficient, you might feel less than when you're comparing yourself to a curated, um, you know, vision board, if you will.
Right.
So I think it's just important to be compassionate. It's important to connect. Many mothers are in isolation. The society actually is, we say it takes a village to raise a child, but in reality, many mothers raise their children alone.
Yeah.
So that is, I think, we just need to be aware of that. We need to be aware that we are humans and we need community, and we need to take care of ourselves, and we need a little bit of alone time and a little bit of silence sometimes. And
Yep.
there's nothing wrong with that. We all earn that and all deserve that.
That is a perfect and very needed reminder. So many parents, so many moms take on so much and then they feel like a failure because they can't do it all. But the truth is, they were never meant to do it all. And if
Yes.
anything, that's a really big takeaway. And if you, as a parent, are able to manage that and take care of yourself, it will in turn rub off on your children.
Yes. Also, what message do you want to give your children? Do you want to give your children the message that you have to do it all?
Hmm.
Or do you want to give your children the message, you need to rest sometimes, you need to take a break sometimes, you can ask for help sometimes, you function in a community, you're a part of something big. That is the message. And sometimes you fall short. And when you fall short, that's okay. And sometimes it's not perfect. And that is okay because nothing is perfect. So these are the messages, this resilience, the resourcefulness. This is how we want our children to become as adults. But then when they see us, and also like I really want my child to have joy in his life. I really want him to have these things that really inspire him and make him glow and make him feel connected to other people. So I have to do that for myself. So he has to see that there are things in life that really inspire me, so that he can look for the things that really inspire him. How is he going to know how to do that if I am constantly trying to, keep this? our little lives perfect in perfection. How is he going to learn how to do that? How is he going to learn to flow with imperfection, to flow with mistakes if I'm not giving myself permission? I try to tell myself this.
Right. That's the awareness. You have the awareness. Sometimes you forget and then it comes back. And those moments when you forget, you are reminded through the way you feel. You are reminded through the feedback you're getting in your environment, your level of stress. The reminders are always there. But if you have that intention to model how you would like your child to live their life, that's the best thing you can do, is just to have that intention and to give yourself the freedom to do it. Yeah. This is such a good reminder and so helpful. And I can't believe our time is already up here. There's so much more I'm sure we could cover here, but you've definitely offered some really great, valuable tools here. If my listeners are hearing you and they want to learn more from you, tell me where they can find you and what other resources you have that could help them.
So I'm on Instagram and I post a lot of like articles and little quotes and stuff like that, book recommendations. So they can definitely follow me at Duygu Balan. And I also have a website that has a newsletter that has similar things. Like I have a lot of updates, books, new books that are coming out, and book events and that kind of things, articles as well. So they can sign up to my newsletter. And Confidently Chilled you can find anywhere that sells books. So yeah, I'm very easy to reach and easy to find.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for all the work you're doing in the world. It's so necessary and it's so needed. And thank you so much for taking your time to come on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for the work that you are doing. I think, having conversations like this is so important, allowing people to normalizing these things, normalizing the struggle, normalizing the challenges of parenting is just so important. So thank you so much for doing what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And thank you again.
Thank you.